Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I never thought when I had a nice little deal with the tribe. I was helping build medical clinics and working with Jennifer and her staff. And then I was asked to come do this. I never expected that I would walk into a situation where I was having to make these kinds of decisions and deal with these kinds of issues. I guess I should have thought about it. COVID was a wild card. This is the hardest thing we've ever had to do. And my goal today is to help you understand where we're coming from and to help you make your own hard decisions. And I know that it's probably one of the hardest decisions that you'll have to make. We've invited, and we're fortunate to have Dr. Jim Laidler here today. He's just began his relationship with the tribal clinic in Salem. So happens that he is a virologist, which is an expert in viruses and the kind of things that we'll be talking about today. He's published on the issue. He's of course, a medical doctor. He has a PhD. He is a retired military man who was a surgeon for the military. So we couldn't have got a better guy to help us understand what's going on. So our objective today is not just to talk about this policy, but also to have a resource here for you to ask questions about your own personal concerns so that you can make the most informed decision that you can. And we are going to respect your decision. I want to start with that with respect. This isn't about the debate that's been raging in the country about whether to get the vaccine. Is the risk greater from the vaccine or the virus? That's not what this is about. I trust that each one of you have given this careful consideration and that from your own personal point of view, you've made a rational decision based on all the factors that you consider that affect your life. So some of you have decided that the unknowns and the risk of the vaccine are greater than the risk of the virus to you personally. If I was 28 years old and healthy, that's a rational decision to make. Because we all know that most people in that age group, you get coronavirus, it's not that serious most of the time. So that's a rational decision to make. But from our standpoint, there were a lot more factors to consider. So I'm not really here to debate. I have no interest in debating your personal choice. That's for you to decide. But what we were facing is a very serious risk that we would lose the ability to operate this facility. We know that that's a serious risk. Our neighbors to the west already have gone through that, and they are by no means out of the woods. In talking to other tribes, there's at least 2 other casinos that are on the verge of closure. I would attend meetings with the tribal council, and they are able to participate in conferences and so forth with people from the medical community and the state and other community health organizations. And every time I would attend one of these meetings, the council would say, it's only going to get worse. When school starts, it's going to get worse, and all of this information is out there. And I think we concluded that there was a serious risk that we would not be able to operate the casino with the kind of up and down of these positive cases, with the quarantining of people who came into contact with people, mostly family members from their homes. I think perhaps what we're doing here has been effective. We've not had a lot of in this property infections, but that doesn't really change the problem. We have like 60 people who can't be here today, and it's only going to get worse means that's going to grow. So I guess does anybody here doubt that? I mean, that's based on the best information we could get. So then when we're faced with that kind of information, then our job is to say, okay, how do how do we prevent that? We should do everything we possibly can as a leadership team, the tribal council, and our board to not let that happen. And what it came down to was there really were no other options at this point. So when you make a decision, you weigh the risks of this decision versus this one, and you make your own decision. We had the same task, and that's what we did. So we said the risk of this, of closing this casino, the loss of all these jobs, stopping the flow of revenue to the tribe, and that revenue is used for programs that the tribe values very highly. You know, the education programs, the health care. I'm just ticking off the ones I value. I think the elder care, the elder benefits, the housing. I can go there. If you look at the list of the things the tribe provides, it's huge and it's important. And so the tribal council looked. That was what the factors they had to consider: the risk of losing, closing this facility, laying off 1,000 people, give or take, stopping the revenue. It's unthinkable. And so those are the factors we had to consider in making the decision for the casino. I don't really, I respect people's individual decisions. And so this is not what I want to do today. I don't want to debate your decision, which I think for you, I'll concede right now, was valid, and you have a right to make it. But we had to make a decision too, and it's a hard one. But what I want to do is help those who are uncertain how they wish to proceed, to get as much information as they can to make the best decision. So that's what I want to do, is make the best decision. I hope your decision is to stay, remain a part of our team, and help us get through this. And that's what I really hope. So I'm hoping in good faith you can use Dr. Lathler's knowledge and anything else you can get to make the right decision for you and for us. I mean, for us, I want you to stay. But you have to make that decision. It's your decision to make. I respect that. So I'd rather, we can go through. I'm going to go through the policy very quickly because I really want to get to the heart of the issues. Under the policy, we're going to give you as much time as we can to allow you to make an informed decision, obtain information, determine what happens if you choose A versus B, and really make the right decision. So we've delayed the start of the program until September 13th. It gives us 10 days to sort of figure out if you even want to participate in the next phase of the program. After 10 days, people will have the option of either showing vaccine card and be vaccinated, or we give 30 days of twice-a-week testing. So you obtain tests, which I believe we can provide. I don't know for sure, but I think we have enough tests to provide those tests. But ultimately, the burden of obtaining the tests, we're going to ask you to do that. We can't call Walmart and say we need 800 tests. They won't do it because they've limited the number of tests that they'll provide. They want people to come into the store, get a test, and buy other things. If we buy 800 tests, nobody can come, they lose that. So they're not going to do that. So we're going to try and obtain tests for you, but if not, you should look for tests now. You have then 30 days to do the testing before you make up your mind. But at the end of that 30 days, it's going to require vaccination. So ultimately, this is going to be a vaccination requirement. But you'll have plenty of time. If your decision is to find another job, you've got 40 days to do that. I don't want you to do that. But we tried to be fair. We tried to do everything we can to be fair. Understanding that, I hope you understand that we had a decision to make, and it's different than many of yours. But I hope you also understand that ours was a rational decision too for the tribe. We respect your decision. We hope you respect ours. You still have a decision to make, another one. And we're going to try and help you to the best of our ability to make that and make the best decision we can. With that, I'm going to throw it open to questions And anything medical related, I'm of course going to ask Dr. Laylor to answer. And if it's details of the plan or things we haven't thought of, then we'll ask Camille or I'll try and answer.
Thank you. That was very well spoken, and appreciate that. You know, this is a hard decision for a lot of people. I'm vaccinated. I'm one that's been a proponent of vaccination for a long time, but I struggle with this as well. So, forcing people into a decision, not an addiction. But going along that lines and business decision and trying not to bring it in here, whether it's from outside or in, are we then also going to require vaccination cards from customers for recent tests? Because that seems like if we're really trying to go down the road, we should do it from every side. Personally, I believe that.
I understand that, and it's something that we've discussed. We're not at this time. I mean, I'm just going to be totally frank. You guys are adults and part of my team. Our goal right now is to keep the casino open. We're all vaccinated. We'll keep the casino open. Customers also have that choice. And the customer vaccination doesn't really enter into as much our decision making. If we're all vaccinated, the risk to us from the customers, if they're masked especially, is minimal. So no, at this time we're not planning on doing that.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering if you could talk about religious exemptions.
Right, we're not planning on having religious exemptions. And there's also the question of medical exemptions. If someone has there will be things we can't imagine, I suppose, that would affect this medically. So if you have a medical exemption, you want a medical exemption, contact HR, and we're going to have you work with our clinic and decide if that works. We're not going to just allow doctor's notes and just that kind of thing. We're going to have it be fairly narrow.
Can you tell me why you're eliminating the religious exemptions?
Because our overall goal is to have a workforce that doesn't call in doesn't contract COVID and have that problem. So we're minimizing the number of exemptions.
I respect what you're saying. There have been many times, especially in the tribe's history, where assimilation was pushed and pushed and pushed. So if you take away the religious exemption, it's a form of doing that now to us. And I would be willing to pay more for my health insurance. I would be willing to be tested whenever you say, I have been so careful. And this job is so important to me. I've been here for almost 26 years. And I want to stay. And I just hope you consider some options for people like me.
I do want to factor in comments today. We didn't, I want to hear what you have to say. So I appreciate that, and let us deal with that. This is the hard. This is an example of why this is the hardest decision I've ever had to participate in. I didn't make this decision. It's the board and the council, but I will not hide behind that. I support the policy. So I appreciate your comment.
I'm not a good public speaker at all, but I'm going to do my best, and I ask that you guys return to me what actually did. My name is Wesley West. My tribal number is 1596. I've been working here for 12 years, not 26 like you have, God bless. I've worked in EBS, and I wasn't always the best employee. I still will call them from time to time. I'm totally guilty of it. But I've worked for EBS and made my way to slots, and I'm proud of that. Paid off my debt. I have 2 little girls. I don't think you guys are going to care. It's probably going to fall on that baby. I had to explain to them last night, Dad's losing their job. Losing my job because it's going against my religious beliefs. They're going to see their father lose their job. I'd rather them see that than give in to what I believe. The fact that you guys are not allowing them is absurd. The fact that you say it's for safety is absurd. Because it's not. We wouldn't have been smoking for the last 25 years. And when we asked you guys, please don't bring it back, it's been so much better out there for us, the only response was other places in California, and they really lost the casino. That's all it's about. Yeah, we've been doing well. Hand over fist. This isn't about safety, and I'm not trying to debate you. I'm telling you the truth. It's not about safety. It's about keeping face. That's all it's about. And you're putting people in a position where they choose their religious beliefs or their personal beliefs over their livelihood. That's all it is. And it's sad. I never thought, as a tribal member who lives on my own reservation, that I'd have to be doing this today. That I'd have to come here, I'd have to explain to my little girls, Dad has no job now, because they're making me choose my beliefs and the Lord God over this. And it's that, and this is how I'm going to end it. I'm asking everybody here, if you have any kind of hesitancy over any of this, don't comply to it, because they're going to take away over and over, and it's only going to get worse. And what else can I say? I'm out of a job. I have to tell my girls that Dad's out of a job because I would go against my beliefs. And that's how it's going to be. I ask everybody just to think about it for a moment. Give a moment of it. Give a little bit of thought before you even go with it.
Hey, my name is Miguel Ochoa, and my point is coming across a little bit different than everybody else. From my understanding, this virus came from another country, possibly, September. It became aware that it had escaped, whether it's a lab or food or whatever you think it is. I really don't care. Bottom line is, this was in fact, the government knew it, the government covered it up. Nancy Pelosi and all these guys were like, hey, don't wear a mask, come to Chinatown, everything is okay. Next thing you know, we're closed down for 2 months. So a lot of people, whenever I say something, they're like, don't make it political. I didn't make it political. The government did. All because one guy named Trump was in office. Now, what you like the guy, you didn't like the guy, I don't care. I've never voted. I really don't care. Here's the truth that I do know. Last year, Kamala Harris and Vice President, or not Vice President, but the President now, Joe Biden, was saying, we're not taking the shot, and neither should you, if you're a Democrat, because Trump is in office. That sets a precedent. Well, now you're telling me I got to take the shot, because, and here's my question, is this statutory? Is this federal? Or is this just a tribal thing? Because that makes a big difference. Because if you fire me here because I didn't take a shot, and then I go, hey, well, you know what? I came from a different country. I've helped build this place up. I bring in tons of customers all the time. Hell, I spent thousands of my own dollars in this place, building it up. Because I believe in it. I believe in what the tribe was selling when they said, hey, we want the opportunity to build something so that we can give to our community. Now, obviously, they were talking primarily about the tribe, but you've seen how the fruition has come where they help everybody. Even a blind man can see that. So here's my thing. If this is medical, then what's the medical reasoning? I've been in this casino for the last 2 years. I probably had virus 20 times. Because here's the rules. At one point, the rules were, you can come to work, you have to wear a mask and shut up. Don't say anything about anything. I understand that. I respect that. I've been here 25 years. I love you guys, and you guys obviously love me because I'm still here. So we have this working relationship where I know what the bottom end is to bring in money so that the tribe enriches itself, and then it enriches its communities around it. That's common sense. I've never had a common sense issue. What I do have a common sense issue with is the fact that I had a conversation with my doctor not too long ago. I asked him a billion questions. And you know what he was telling me? He can't say anything because federally, he could lose his job and his license. What does that tell you? So what is this all about? Is this Because here's the thing, right? When I was on the tables, I had to wear a mask. I had to be quiet. I couldn't talk about COVID. I couldn't talk about anything. But if I come in as a guest and drop $2,000, which is stupid, but hey, that's okay. That doesn't make any sense. So you like me when I'm blowing my money, but you don't like it when I'm working for you, making you money. I mean, there has to be, and now you're telling me that if people don't take a vaccine that they survived through, first of all, for the last 2 years, now you're going to fire us? I mean, this sounds like what they're doing in California, New York, and what are the other places? The only places that I know of that aren't doing that are Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and a couple of other ones that I can name. Why is their game plan so different than what we're doing here? Is it because our government's broken? There's got to be another reason. It's not medical, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I'd be dead. Here's my personal story, right? To the doctor. Here's my personal story. 14 years ago, 2 years in a row, I took the flu shot. 2 years in a row, I had pneumonia. And for HR, if you don't believe me, go look it up. And I love Camille. She's always been a great friend, and a great, managerial, person that I look up to. But I quit taking that flu shot 14 years ago, and for 14 years, I haven't had the flu. Now you want me to stick something in my body that may or may not kill me. Just because it didn't kill you and it didn't affect you, doesn't mean it's going to affect all these other people. So what's the medical reasoning then? If you take that into account, technically, I should already be dead. So something doesn't add up. There's a saying out there that something doesn't pass the smell test, and it doesn't. And I understand where the tribe comes, because I used to go to tribal meetings all the time. And I still talk to my tribal, team members and my tribal friends. So I don't understand. Why are those that refuse to take the vax, that survived this virus, because I'm sure if they're like me, we've been everywhere. Up until the government said, hey, you can't do this. And with that, I'll leave that, And I don't understand what the decision is that you guys are going to make. But if I'm put in that position, here's what I'm looking at. If people get fired here, and then you go try to do your own thing, and all of a sudden the state government says, hey, you can't do that because you have to provide that you're vaccinated, then what are you going to do? What do you do? What's your livelihood going to look like? And like I was saying also, if that is only an effect for us, then how come this place is still operational? Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'd like to respond just because I'm going to ask Dr. Lather to respond to the questions you asked about the safety issues and the risk of COVID versus the vaccine. I think we have to have that conversation because that seems to be what you want to talk about. But I guess I would just bring it back, and what I'm hearing is that for you personally, the risk of the vaccine, is more important than what the issues that we consider that you don't really weren't as important in your consideration, but because keeping the casino open and operating generating revenue for the tribe. That's a rational decision that any individual one of you can make. So it's not, I don't think it's a question then of arguing about it. The tribal council and the board made that balancing decision and chose to do what they needed to do to keep the casino operating long term. We don't know how long this is going to last. So at some point, I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree on the relative importance of that. But I would ask Dr. Lather to address some of the issues I think I heard you raise about the risk of the vaccine, the risk of the virus. When you say that you've been here, probably had the virus, it was no big deal. I would ask at this point, maybe we get some medical information.
Well, can I ask him a question though?
Sure.
Can he address the issue of natural immunity from having had COVID? Because I'm sure into it somehow.
Yeah, and in fact, there's actually recently a fairly good study that came out where they looked at comparing people who had, they would look just natural immunity versus vaccine. They looked at people who had documented COVID infection previously, then got the vaccine, versus people who just got the vaccine. And people who had the infection and got the vaccine had much broader immunity. Even comparing to before they had the vaccine and then after, their immunity was also broadened, so they had more resistance to potentially variants that are coming up, including, in this case, they're looking at the gamma variant because this is an older study. But what we're looking at is that, like every coronavirus, there are four, before COVID-19, there were four coronaviruses that circulated regularly among humans. And what they do is they mutate over time so that they can come back and infect the same people over again. And that's exactly what COVID-19 is doing. As people develop more and more immunity in the community, the population becomes more immune. It will mutate to evade that. And that includes the vaccine immunity. The advantage to getting the vaccine now is it gives you a jump start on having some, broadening your natural immunity so that you can be better able to resist these new variants. And Delta is just the one that's current. It's currently about 99% in the US, but they're following epsilon, iota, lambda, and mu variants that could at any time become the next hot thing in town. And what's going to happen over time is that most likely this COVID-19 is going to become the fifth circulating human coronavirus, and it's going to be with us forever. The advantage of the vaccine, again, is it gets a jump start, so we can get to the place where we are with the other four coronaviruses, where people have enough immunity from their whole lifetime experience with it, that when they get it, it's just a common cold. What we're seeing with the Delta variant, people who've been vaccinated, is that, yes, some people go to the hospital, but most people are experiencing basically a common cold. That's the medical justification. I agree with you that when you make politics and science, you get bad policy, bad science. But this is the stuff that's, this is something that has no political part to it. We are seeing that people do better if they've had the vaccine, even if they've had previous infection. I personally had a COVID-19 infection early on, and got the vaccine. I was one of the, I got vaccinated in January, so I was an early one. And certainly my resistance has been very, because I get exposed all the time, I'm sure. Did that answer your question?
Well, it wasn't as much a question as it was information for everybody that isn't aware. Because this has been a highly politicized thing. When I talk about COVID, like for example, this meeting that I was talking about, people are saying, well, you're making it political. It's not political. I can care less if you take a shot or don't take a shot. I know friends that take the shot, I know friends that don't take the shot. And I treat them the same. What doesn't make any sense is that in the world outside of this place, or any other federally mandated place as it's moving forward, we're being poised for a certain situational outcome where, like, if you just run your life normally, nobody cares. Let alone, check this out. In the House Nancy Pelosi runs the thing where you have to wear masks. In the Senate, they don't. So that's an unbalanced thing. So when I say that, it's not political, it's common sense. Where's the common sense line? So it's not a question as much as it is giving you guys information about what's going on in the real world. Because here, it's like you go to Disneyland and you see everything, you're like, ooh, wow. Hey, how you doing today? Nice day, everything. You're supposed to be prim and proper and everything, and that's great, because that's what you want to do. You want to provide a service to the people that come here so that they can have a good time, and so can you, because we're a balance, how do they call it? We're a balance in the thing of life, right? And if there's an imbalance there, then it's going to affect everybody. In this case, we're allowing people to come through the front door at whim, but I'm going to lose my job even though I hang out with those people. That doesn't make any sense. On a common sense scale, that's a 0. And I'm trying to get an understanding from you guys why that is.
Well, we know that our nearest neighbor casino closed because COVID-19 sort of ravaged their workforce. I know that 2 others are on the verge of that right now because COVID-19 is ravaging their workforce. Now, will those people who get sick and miss work get over it? I mean, those who are not too worried about COVID would say yes, they will, and most of them will. 90% of them will. But the casinos are still closed and the revenue to the tribes has dried up. So your concerns are different than our concerns, and that's what I think I want to keep reminding people. I believe this was a rational decision for the tribe to make to protect its source of revenue for its programs. How it affects, I hate the fact that it affects those of you who feel so strongly that you feel like you are going to lose your job. But when you have a hard decision, it's all about weighing the things, and we don't all weigh things the same. But for the tribe, it was not an irrational decision to say we want to protect this casino long term. If we're headed toward, I don't know all the Latin alphabet, but if we're headed toward all those Latin alphabet versions coming in and staying here forever, and what he's basically saying is the unvaccinated are going to take the full brunt of those things, and we hope that it doesn't mutate to where our vaccines don't work. That could happen. There's no 100% assurances that anything we're doing is going to be 100% effective. We just try to make the best decisions we can, and in this case, it's a huge decision with consequences I don't like. But the tribal council, the board, the people who are responsible for the well-being of the tribe consider all the issues. But one thing we know is that the neighboring casinos are going down, and we're early in this process. So I hope you can respect that part of it, and we can. You may not have put as much weight on the importance of that as the tribe does, and I understand that. But that's what I have to keep coming back. I'm not challenging your decisions and the basis for them. Everybody has different reasons, and you've all given it careful consideration. I'm not challenging that. I'm just saying that the tribe had a decision to make based on completely different factors.
There's your next comment here.
I don't think you guys have fully realized the decision that you guys are making. We're already understaffed as it is. That's why you had to create a minimum wage of $16. The people who haven't got vaxxed already are not going to get vaxxed. They will leave by your hand or their own. You're leaving this casino more stressed. The last 2 years have been a nightmare. We're picking up the slack of you guys. The decisions to go back and forth have been outrageous. I can't believe the decision that you're making. You're forcing people to do something they don't want to do. And if they don't fall in line, they're being punished. Does that sound familiar? Your historic heritage? The people who had to walk the trails of tears, do you think this is what they envisioned for their future? This nation was built for freedom. I mean, is that what Martha Jane weaved all those baskets for? So the tribe can oppress the employees that create revenue for the tribe? To oppress your own brothers and sisters here? It sounds outrageous. I will challenge you in 40 days, and I will leave. This casino will be more unemployed than you've ever imagined. How can you keep up with that? Yesterday, Legends closed. I mean, how far are you going to keep closing these departments? You should be ashamed of yourself. Your ancestors are rolling over in their graves right now.
I guess I very eloquently spoken. Martha Jane was my great-grandmother. So and tribes also have a long history of dying from infection. 90% of the tribal members in the Willamette Valley died from infection. So I would say my ancestors would have loved the vaccine to save the lives of 90% of the tribal members. So but that's not the debate I want to have here today. The tribal council, again, they're responsible and we're responsible for keeping this casino going. I believe that we will lose a lot of employees. It's going to be unprecedented hardship. Everybody does, do that. But it'll be our job to figure out a way to deal in these new times. This is uncharted territory, and I don't disagree with you. My hope is that many of you will do soul searching and make a decision that doesn't result in you leaving. But I respect whatever decisions you finally make, and we're going to have to work hard to deal with it. I agree with that.
All right, so my question is to you guys is, what is the logic behind the safety of getting us employees to get the vaccines, but not recommending the guests to have it or anything? And if this is supposed to be a herd immunity or something for vaccines, why is it only one side of the fence gets it, the other one comes in? Especially considering cross-contamination between a person that doesn't have a vaccine and could be contaminated, because let's face it, our security is really not checking where we can't, or the sensors, they're really not. So how do I know that Bob comes in, use an example name, and he has corona and I'm vaccinated, so if I get sick because of him, yeah, I'll be fine because of the vaccine. However, doesn't that possibly be taken to something stronger that can then turn around and kill Joe? Like, why is it only we have to be vaccinated, but not them? Especially if we've got checkpoints at all of the entrances that show the thermal scan.
Because they bring in the money and we do not. That's
Fair enough.
We cannot solve the coronavirus problem for society. What we can do is make decisions that allow us to continue to operate the casino. And that's what this will do. It will be difficult because we'll have fewer employees, I understand that. But that's what this will do. If our employees are vaccinated and will not, get serious cases of the virus, then we'll have a stable group of people to work with. Employees or customers will make their own decisions, and the unvaccinated are putting themselves at risk when they go out in public. Most of our cases we've had here have not. I don't know if any of them have been contracted here. It's out in the society. And society is going to continue to be a dangerous place. I don't disagree with that.
Technically, in the medical sense of what you guys say, those doctors, they're not only putting themselves at risk, they're putting everybody they come in contact with risk. So that's the whole thing that I think everybody's saying. I know in the end it's all going to fall on that you guys are going to do it. That's how it is. But the fact that you have this backward thinking that the employees have to have it to keep their job. Especially, whether you're tribal or not. But you have to have it to have your job. You have to have it. Because we're worried about the safety of our employees and not wanting to shut down. So we don't give a crap about whether yes, that's something. And they themselves are putting everybody at risk in your own work. They're doing it. But you don't care. Not only to the point that for the last 2 years, especially on slots, we have been on the front lines telling people, being threatened, saying, hey, 400's watching. If you don't tell people to put on your mask, you're being arrested. So we had to go up to people, tell them constantly, put on your mask, put on your mask, put on your mask. Because we were getting cussed out, spit on, and one of us actually got punched. And that's how it is. We had to keep doing that. And then they don't get kicked out. I had one guy throw a chair, refuse to put on his mask, and security let him stay. They let him go to the tables with his mask off still. That's why I said it has nothing to do with safety. Nothing at all. It's about keeping face to the public. And that's all it is. It's not about keeping the casino. The casino's been doing really well. If anybody hasn't seen that, they've been doing extremely well. Way better than we have in the last 10 years. This last 2 years, especially with this virus going on, we've been doing crazy well. And I can say that for slots. We've been doing really well too. But it doesn't matter. That's not the case. What actually matters to you is keeping face. And I understand that. I understand it from the company's point. But to say that you care about the employees is a complete lie. It's a complete lie. Because like I said before, you wouldn't have had smoking for so long. You wouldn't have brought it back. We wouldn't have had it. Just recently, I had one of my coworkers go up to him and say, hey, this match is down like this. If you put up your mask, please, she refused. Call their supervisor with us. You put on your mask, please, when you have that refused. They call security over. Security allowed it. This is allowed for machines. This is allowed. If they get up, they can put it on. But having it down here is allowed. But we were told for years that we would put it on.
And that's something that's not, about these people, these guests providing income to the casino, which I understand. But we have been out there on the front lines for 2 years doing this stuff, while you guys have been up sick. I know that you have a totally different job, and you make sure that the casino's running, but we're the ones on the front lines dealing with these people. And to come back to us and say that we have, especially no religious freedom, that you're gonna trample on that and make us choose something. My livelihood over my belief, I will never go against my belief. I won't. That can't happen, even if it makes me suffer, it makes my children suffer, and that's what I have to do school. I had to do that last night. I tell my wife, I don't know what we're gonna do. I have no clue, but that's something I will not back down from. And that's why I said, I hope people don't comply with this, and I think you're gonna see an unprecedented amount of people go. And when you think about this place shutting down, it is gonna shut down.
That's what I was
You're
gonna
gonna have
ask.
a
When
lot
you
of
lose half your workforce,
a lot
what's
of
gonna happen?
what's going on around here, and it's not gonna stop. I pray that the people that lose their jobs find a way to find a job, find some comfort, because that's all we have. I went to this place for 12 years, and I never thought that, there are times where I thought this place was so backwards and so corrupt. But as a tribal member and as an employee, I thought that's not the way it actually is. And I come to realize that the place is completely council's corrupt. Everybody that is higher up seems to not give a crap about the employee because we're replaceable. As simple as that, every single one of us is replaceable. I've had so much corruption in any department I've worked in, it's crazy. And it's sickening.
Yeah, I have a question. Now, so you're saying that people don't have choices? You know, I mean, the customers, the guests don't have to wear masks, but employees have to wear masks, so nobody has choices anymore. And that is so wrong. And then I was thinking, is the vaccination FDA certified? You know, and then another thing comes to my mind, weather is up and down and different temperatures. Of course, your immunity is, you know, then get used to the cold, then it's warm, so it's jolting the system, you know, so of course, people with weak system is going to get sick, no matter what. It happened throughout the years, it's going to happen now. And, you know, and these masks, yes, okay, we have to wear it, but this hole up here, inside here, and under here a little bit, you know, and so bad bacteria can get in. I could go to the restroom and sneeze or cough, and the bacteria is all over the place. And so can get my bacteria that I coughed way in the bathroom over here. Yeah, I don't understand where everybody's coming from. Yeah, it just boggles my mind.
So I can speak to one question that you have, which is the vaccine FDA approved? The Pfizer vaccine has gotten full FDA approval. The others are still under emergency use utilization authority. So, but it's anticipated that they're going to be approved at some point.
Okay, so I got both shots already, and I'm just curious, when the third one, the booster shot thing comes out, are we going to mandatory to get those also?
Yes, in policy, we've written that when there's a recommended booster shot, that we're asking everybody to participate in that as well.
And will the tribe help that out there, like they did the
Yes,
shot?
yes, as well as Polk County will be here on, I believe, September 12th to do an on-site vaccination clinic here.
Hello, my name is Sam Thornton. You guys probably know me as 11663. I often joke that it doesn't feel like you guys care about us as individuals, and this furthers that. I work in EVS. We're in charge of actually cleaning and sterilizing and keeping a lot of people safe from the virus. And I've been working for 2 years almost in this. And I've never felt less like an individual than I do now. We are shorthanded every day. We work hard every day. 2 to 3 areas. I have coworkers in their 70s who come in, work 2 to 3 areas. My supervisor has been working 2 to 3 areas. When I am no longer working here and other employees are no longer working here, that is going to increase dramatically. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but if you are pro for this, get ready to work. If you're not on board with this, I hope you find a better job.
My name's Matt, I work in slots. Been here for almost 17 years. Never really thought that this was probably going to be the way I'd leave. Thought it was going to be a nice retirement, happy way out. You guys say that you are trying to protect us / the guests, but like everybody else has already, some people have already mentioned that you're wanting us vaccinated but not the guests. Everybody is spreading this just as much as everybody else. Currently, my dad is recovering from COVID, got it from his vaccinated boss. So if this is going to continue, and it's never going to end, and it's always going to mutate, yet you're making it a mandatory shot for you to keep your job, why didn't we do it for the flu? You both said that, you guys have said that it's pretty much running in the same line as the flu. You're always going to have a booster shot, but yet you never enforce the flu, yet you're enforcing this. At the same time, you guys are saying that you guys are looking out for us, but then also backing it up by, because we want to keep the revenue flow. Well, that kind of tells me, I don't know about anybody else behind me, that you're more looking at just trying to keep the business and the money flowing, not caring what we think, not caring what we believe in, and saying, you either help us earn money or go find a new job. Because, like I said, I and a lot of us in here have been working through this crap the last 2 years with masks, without masks, with smoking, without smoking. Me personally, luckily, knock on wood, I haven't had it yet. But eventually I'm probably going to, and I'll fight it. And I'm 35, I'll probably win. But it should be my choice to take the vaccine, not yours. And right now, I feel like I'm being told, and all of us that are being told, that you take the vaccine, we don't care what you think, or you lose your job. And I shouldn't have to choose to lose my job or take a drug to a virus that I can survive. It should be my choice, not yours. Thank you.
Again, I guess I would ask you to again consider, when people say it's just about the money, I want to go back about 25 years. When I first came here to work at the casino and help build the casino, the tribe had very, very few programs. When we opened, we had almost no tribal managers because none of our tribal members met the qualifications to take the jobs. So we opened a casino. We had no benefits for our elders. Our health care was limited to only people who lived in 5 counties, and we used federal money. We had very few other programs. They all fit in trailers lined up over on the tribal property. And so, as soon as we opened the casino, we started a revenue stream. And before, and I was here 7 years total, but I was here for 5 years running the casino. But at the end of that 5 years, I went to graduation ceremonies for Camino and Michael Cherry and April Campbell, who's on our board now. Debbie Childers, Michael Cherry's on our board now. All college graduates went on to master's degree programs. We have doctors who are members of our tribe now. Tribal elders get monthly stipends. They're extremely helpful when you get to that age. The education program, I read the newspaper and I see all the people graduating from college and advanced degrees, professional occupations. Most of the manager positions at the tribe especially are filled by qualified tribal members. And now we have highly qualified tribal members in positions. Free health care for all the tribal members. You guys have the best health program that any of the industries offer. Tribe paid you during the downtime. We raised wages to the top of the industry. We match your 401k. So to say it's all about money, I won't accept that. I will accept that you have a hard decision to make, and that the factors that you consider are real to you. But the factors that the tribe considered and the board are very, very real to me and the other tribal members. And so to say it's just about money, I won't accept that. I'd like Doctor to address the issue of the medical questions that he raised, the risk of COVID.
Right. There's a lot of confusion and understandably so about why vaccines important with COVID-19 and why this is different from influenza. And a lot of the reasons it's different from influenza is because we, as people, have been personally dealing with influenza since we were born. Every year it comes around. Every year we're exposed. Whether we get sick or not, we're exposed to the virus and we develop some degree of immunity to this. So, vaccine, sure, that's great. It's especially important as we get older, being my age, and our immune system starts to falter and needs a little kick in the butt to get us through the But, yeah. The reason this is a particular problem is this is a brand new virus to human beings. We don't know how long this circulated in bats, but it looks like thousands of years it was in bats. And it made the jump to humans. However it got there, from a lab, from a bat, from pangolins, from who knows where. I'm not going to get into that because there's no way of knowing that. But the problem is it's new. So we have a window of time where everyone basically has to do that first jump up into their immune response, because your first exposure is going to be potentially very dangerous. First time you get it, that's when people get the sickest. That's when people die. And watched a lot of people get really sick and really sick and die. And it's not a particularly pleasant way to get it. But the point is, once you've had it or the vaccine, then all these variants, and this is what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not speaking on behalf of the FDA or the CDC or anybody, but just as a person who has a lot of training in virology, coronaviruses do this. They mutate and they stay in the community, the population, the human population, forever, because they mutate just enough to keep coming back around. But the thing is, like the influenza virus, as you've been exposed to it all of your life, or as you get exposed to it year after year, your immune system learns how to manage it. And it no longer becomes a problem. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but the biggest problem with the coronavirus infection is not the virus itself, it's our immune system's response to it, because it's a novel virus. Our immune system, what's killing people is an overreaction. And one thing the vaccine does is it provides exposure in a very controlled way, so that your immune system will not tend to overreact. That's what's killing people. That's what's causing people to end up on ventilators and end up with permanent lung damage, is the immune system's response to this novel virus. Once you've had some experience to it, once your immune system gets to learn the ropes of this virus, subsequent exposures to it or other variants will become less and less and less a problem. But it's that first step up. That's where people are dying. That's what kills people. And the vaccine gives you the chance to get that step up in a very controlled and safer, not completely safe. The vaccine is not completely safe. I've had it. It's a rough vaccine, compared to, say, getting a tetanus shot or even a flu shot. But it's a lot safer and more controlled than getting the virus. Yes, most people who get the virus do fine. But, this is a casino. You guys know the odds. Let's say it's 99 to 1 odds that you're going to survive and be fine. But if you're that one person who ends up in the ICU, your chance of having a serious infection are 100%. And it's, like playing the casino, it's your choice. How do you want to play the odds?
Next comment back here.
Yep, I'm sorry. We want to get some other folks a chance to ask questions. Go ahead.
Did you try taking into account or read the letter that was approved by the FDA from biotech? Because the letter from the FDA actually states that the current mold that they have as the vaccine is not the one they're producing. It goes by a different name, and there are 0 of those available currently. Because the name of the vaccine is Comater. And if you don't have that provided for, you're not having the backing of the FDA, which means we have no recourse should something happen. So my question to you is, especially when reading this document, it states that this clinical trial is actually extended out. This trial of this vaccine lasts until 2023 or 2024 before it has a final resolution to what it is. So how can you tell us that we need to take a vaccine that has a trial that's still going on through the FDA, and that the FDA-approved version of it is not even in circulation whatsoever?
As far as the different versions, I've not heard anything of that. The version, the Pfizer version, the Moderna version, they may have renamed it, but it's still the same mRNA that they're putting in the same lipid capsules. So that hasn't changed. To address the FDA trials, even after a drug is fully approved, there's a phase 4 trial that goes on, actually for 5 years usually, where they're still gathering information. Because, and we see this with a lot of medications that get released, is that they look great in studies, but once you get them out into the millions of people in the population, who all have different genetic backgrounds, have different medical issues, taking different medications, taking different recreational drugs, doing all kinds of different things, other complications pop up. So there's a surveillance period that goes on for many years afterwards. In fact, technically the surveillance period never ends, but it officially ends usually 5 years. I mean, whether the vaccine is FDA approved or not, it's been in wide use. When I looked last night, the CDC is reporting that 170 million plus people have had both vaccinations. 200 million people have had at least one injection, just in the U.S. And that doesn't count the however many hundreds of millions of people everywhere else. So it's had a pretty extensive trial.
Yes, but what backing do I have if I get sick? What happens if I get sick and I die? What my family has recourse? Because with the emergency use, there is no legal action that they can take. There is no backing that I have. The FDA drug allows for that backing. That's not available. So if you're willing to provide the FDA approved under the name of commentary, I will take the vaccine. Because then I have the backing. Otherwise, this is an experimental drug, and you're in violation of the Nuremberg Code. It's true. Specifically Articles 1 and 4.
They say that they need to be used interchangeably, and that there is a difference in them, but not enough to call it correct. And that the BioNTech one is the experimental one. And that they have a huge surplus of that. And they don't have the one that did it, say that they don't have it, and that's what they're doing. You're pushing in experimental drug on us. And you touted that it was FDA approved, but it's actually not. The one that they're giving out is not.
Therapy is not.
Yeah, it's not actually FDA approved. That's the thing. I said, yeah, this thing right over here. I don't know your name, sorry, I forgot it, but 26 years of this thing going on. You know, it's pretty absurd. But I'll probably stop now before I get cut off.
I have a list of things that I would like to ask you. If you can guarantee all of these questions that I have regarding this vaccine, regarding this treatment, I will gladly take it. But should you not be able to answer any one of them, I don't feel comfortable doing it. And by you doing what you're trying to do, place my livelihood over a vaccine that could have adverse effects that we don't know. Heaven forbid a woman get pregnant. The vaccine's been available since January. It is now September. The first females who have gotten the vaccine are giving birth now. We have no clue how that affects fetuses. We have no clue how that affects growth development. I had a story directly from a nurse already that a child died recently just after being birthed with blood clots. Now, why do we think blood clots? Maybe Johnson & Johnson. What other issues do these other vaccines have? If the FDA approves it, and you can guarantee my safety, and the safety of my family, and the fact that my family will be taken care of should something adversely happen to me, I will take the vaccine. I want a doctor to sign off on it and take liability and responsibility for said vaccine. Once again, I want to work here, I love working here, and you guys have been great to us, and they're right. You are right about the fact that you treated us fairly. 2 casinos in the entire country paid their employees. Spirit Mountain was one of them. And I am eternally grateful for that. But you are forcing many of us to make a decision and a choice that we can't live with without knowing what certainties or guarantees that you can provide. I love working here. I love my coworkers. We are short-handed, and we could very much use other people. Instead of going this direction, Spirit Mountain could actually take those employees from other casinos who do not feel comfortable getting the vaccine, and we could hire them tomorrow. And every single one of our deficiencies, employer-wise and employee-wise, would be taken care of. And then all of the plans that we have for the buffet, for expanding table games, for everything else that we want to try and do, we could do. But going this route, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the tribe, it's dangerous for the community, and it's sure as heck dangerous for us as employees. Because we have no certainties, and you can't guarantee them.
No, you're absolutely right. We cannot guarantee your safety with the vaccine. There is no vaccine that is 100% safe. That is an absolute fact. There's no medical therapy that is 100% safe. What we do see from 9 months of experience is that the vaccine is safer than the disease. And that's pretty much the definition of why we vaccinate someone for anything, whether it's COVID-19 or smallpox.
So I'm not going to argue policy with you because I assume that this has gone through legal already, as well as tribal council, although I don't see them here. But I would like you to elaborate on the policy a little bit. If I take the bait and I go against my gynecologist and I get this vaccine, are you going to be liable for my adverse reactions? Are you going to pay me and compensate me when I have a hysterectomy? Are you going to pay me for that time off? Are you going to pay me for the fact that I will not have more children? Because as you stated, by law, you have to accept medical exemptions, so you're covering yourself there. But only from the tribe, and as you said, it will be narrow. I have a list. I don't know if you want to go yes, no, back and forth.
No, I would invite you to call HR and discuss your personal medical issues with them. That's what that's policy for.
Will you be accepting medical exemptions from outside of the tribe? Because the tribe does not have
We're going
one.
to address medical exemption requests on a case-by-case basis with the process through HR.
Okay. If I take the bait, if I get vaccinated, I can still get COVID, correct, doctor?
Right, the vaccine.
Correct.
Does not prevent you from getting COVID.
Okay. And if I get vaccinated and I get COVID, I can still give it to my friend who's also vaccinated, who also works here. Correct, doctor?
Again, there's a simple answer and there's a little bit longer answer.
I think the simple answer is yes.
Yeah, the issue.
So let's
if
say.
If I can just finish the answer.
Sure.
Yes, the vaccine at this point does not prevent you from getting infected, but it does prevent you from getting reduces your risk of getting serious illness or death.
Which only protects myself, not my coworkers. So if everybody in this room gets vaccinated, everybody in this room can still get COVID. And everybody in this room can still pass it along.
If you get COVID, you can only.
I would prefer to get this answer from a doctor. So we can still get it and we can still spread it. And if a vaccinated employee gets COVID, I assume that they have to quarantine. Correct?
Yeah, the
So
quarantine
we're
issues is
still
a
short-handed.
policy one I can't get into. I'm not speaking on behalf of Grand Ron or the casino. But as far as, yes, it's, and at some point, probably not too long from now, we're going to be to the point where everyone is going to have had COVID. And we're probably getting really close to that right now in the U.S. And yes, it'll continue to be spread. The goal is to get everyone, as I said, that first jump step up so that your reaction to the virus when you get exposed to it is not catastrophic. Now, again, the whole idea of the vaccine is to lower the probability of getting serious illness or dying from it. Likewise, if you're, again, can you get it? At this point, yes, because we're not getting too deep. They're not seeing sterilizing immunity lasting for very long at all. Sterilizing immunity is the antibody level is so high that you can't even get it. The virus gets in and it's really kill it. But what happens is that you not only are you at less risk of serious illness or death, but if you do get it, you will be able to pass it to other people for a shorter period of time. So you reduce, again, the vaccine, the chief beneficiary of the vaccine is going to be you, the person getting it. But even if you do get the virus, and you'll be able to spread it for less time, and if other people are vaccinated, for them it'll be just like the common cold, more like.
My name is Michelle. I've been here for almost 18 years, well, actually 18 years, and I want to say thank you for being here today. I know it's not easy sitting up there, be all that and stuff. I've been vaccinated since the beginning of the year, and I thank the tribe for making that available to us. I live with people who are in their 80s, so it was a relief to me and to them that you actually allowed family members to come as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I respect everybody else's opinions and how they feel, and they have that choice. However, I feel that it's not a freedom issue. I mean, it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with looking out for each other. And that's just how I feel personally. I understand their thoughts and everything, but that's all lot of us who are vaccinated feel that we're doing this for a community, for our families, and for the place that we work. I like coming to work every day, having a paycheck. I thank you for paying for insurance. We pay $20 a month if I'm single. I don't have my husband on my insurance. Nowhere else you can go, and I feel that you have the right, if people don't want to get vaccinated, to charge people. That's just how I feel. I mean, obviously you're not going that direction, but I just want to say thank you. But I do have a question for the doctor. So when my family got vaccinated, my elderly parents didn't have the reaction that my husband and I did. Does that mean it's less effective for elderly people, or what? I'm just kind of curious. I've never heard of real comment on that. And also my other question is, there was a story that if you get the flu vaccine, it helps boost your immune to help with the COVID as well. Is that true?
Thank you. And actually, thank you for reminding me and bringing up the booster thing, because that was something someone else asked about, and I completely spaced on it. Yeah, right now, the boosters are recommended for people who have immunosuppression, who are on cancer drugs or have HIV or something like that, because they don't tend to mount as good a response really to any vaccine. There's still kind of a hot debate, and there's a lot of studies looking. It's very difficult to compare what sort of symptoms you got to the vaccine to how good your antibody response is, largely because it's really hard to quantify those symptoms. Like, is my 10 out of 10 misery your 10 out of 10 misery? So some of it's that. But it certainly does seem that the people who get sicker from the vaccine tend to get a better immune response. So the other thing too is people, and as much as it pains me to say this, getting since I'm in the 60s, as you get older, your immune system just starts to get sluggish and needs a little bit more prodding to develop. So again, right now the recommendation in the booster is just for people with immune deficiency, but they're sort of hedging towards the direction of people who are older. Second question about the influenza vaccine is fascinating because that's a hot topic in immunology for the last couple of years. And we've seen that just about any time you get a vaccine, or even certain viral, bacterial, parasitic infections, it boosts a broad range of immune responses. In fact, one of my research areas was in using the smallpox vaccine virus to stimulate immune response to fight cancer. But what you do is anytime you get a vaccine or a viral, most viral illnesses, there's some like measles that actually suppress the immune system. But you're basically jump-starting a lot of very non-specific immune responses that will help you fight other viruses and bacteria. Did that answer your question?
Good morning. My name is Angela Sharabi, and I am a tribal member, and I've been employed here for 18 years. I'm in the IT department. My question is for the doctor. Are there statistics, or what are the statistics of fatalities and vaccinated people versus non-vaccinated people? Are there any updates?
Oh, that's good. That fatalities is
Due to COVID, obviously.
okay. There's a lot of sporadic data. I apologize, I don't have it right at the tip of my tongue. It's actually some of the best information right now is coming out of Israel, which is a country that has about, overall, 77% of its population has been vaccinated. That's all comers, including people under 12 who aren't being currently vaccinated. So they've had a big push there. And a lot of people made a point of the fact that the Israeli numbers show that of the people who are being hospitalized for COVID, a large percentage of them are vaccinated. Well, that's largely because the population is almost all vaccinated. So anyone who gets hospitalized for COVID. So, yeah. So we'll be in that. So again, the numbers, they vary from study to study, from place to place, but they still show that people who have been vaccinated, the risk of death, risk of serious illness is lower than people who have not been vaccinated.
Okay. Well, I, for one, am not vaccinated. However, I noticed in my family as well as my workplace, the people that I know that have been, that have COVID or have gotten it, are all vaccinated. And there are quite a few people in my family that are not vaccinated that have been perfectly well and healthy. So I just, that's my concern with getting
just in my county, why is everybody that's vaccinated, that's vaccinated?
Good question. Part of the problem with COVID, and something that's really opened the eyes of a lot of folks who are studying epidemiology, is finding out how many people have inapparent infections. So they're either not very symptomatic or they don't really have any symptoms. And that's been a real problem. The question is, how many of them are there? And even the CDC, which tends to be very conservative, is now estimating that for every one documented case, if you will, there are 4 undocumented cases of COVID. So there's a lot of people out there who got it and either had no symptoms, had mild symptoms, or maybe they got something and they had, maybe a bad cold, but they just didn't shut down, and so nobody knows what it was. Again, it all speaks to the fact that at some point, COVID-19 is going to merge into the human coronaviruses that cause about 1/3 of the common cold. It's on the process of doing that now, and I think the big push, if there is to be a big push in public health, is going to be getting people, especially vulnerable populations, to survive through the point where everyone's been exposed, and we can all just go back to this being a common cold virus. And that's why there are some people who are spinning these nightmare hypotheses. We're going to have COVID shots every 6 months for the rest of our lives until the end of time. Those are unlikely, very, very unlikely. They're like less than betting on double zero, or like unlikely scenarios, because every other coronavirus has just settled down and become a common cold virus once it hits the population.
So, on the basis of, taking the shots and then taking booster shots thereafter, so I've got a serious question. So if I caught the full-fledged, full-blown virus and it hit me, and according to you, all I got was a cold, but one of my coworkers got 3 shots, how does that work? Does that mean that I keep getting the virus and the virus just says, you're fine. You're one of the lucky ones. You're fine. How does that work?
It's basically that.
But then I'm going to lose my job because, you see what I'm saying? Well, it wasn't a question. It was,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought there was a question in there.
Well, there is at the end of it, there is a question. So, my buddy gets 2 shots plus his booster shot, and I get COVID 3 times over. Does that put us at an equal level? Or why do I have to take the shots, plus the booster shots, if we're kind of like on an equal, from my understanding of how viruses work, like in monkey troops, when a virus takes the troop, the ones that have that immunity built into it survive, move on, and then until the next virus comes around and takes out the weakers again, then it keeps going like that. So I would think that with humans it would be the same thing. Otherwise, here's my question. Why is it that the African American community and Latinos have such a hesitancy toward this thing? Is it because maybe African Americans are prone to sickle cell anemia? Could that possibly be part of it? Or why would that be a discrepancy?
Is your question their hesitancy to get the vaccine or the?
No, the level of built-in immunity.
Oh. Well, there's a couple of, I guess, there are a couple of questions buried in that. And one of them is, a lot of what determines whether somebody gets, on the first dose, whether they get an inapparent infection, or they get sick as a dog, or they die, depends on a lot of different things. One is, the one that's hardest to quantify is, what dose of virus did you get? Did you just get like a whiff in case it takes longer for it to replicate up to a effective level, which gives your immune system more time to jump on it? Or did somebody sneeze in your face? In which case, no, just one. And then, so that's the first part. Then another big part is just genetics. Not everyone is susceptible to viruses in the same way. There are some people who are genetically resistant to HIV, for example. There are some people who are genetically resistant to measles. some of it's just luck of the draw. Then there's all the other thing is, what other coexisting medical conditions you have diabetes, you have high blood pressure. And then there's a whole bunch of intangible things like, what have you been exposed to in the past that kind of looks like this enough that you've already got some uniform immunity to it? And that's a part that people have been doing some studies and saying that some exposure to some of the other viruses give us a little bit of an edge. So there's a whole lot of factors going on. Now, the studies that have been done so far, they are limited, unfortunately. We've had a limited time to play with these studies. Is that the natural immunity, if you will, tends to be more robust if you survive. What you see in the people who are dying is they have severe immune dysfunction. Basically, their immune system sees this virus, misreads the situation, and kills it. Just to keep it real simple. So, again, another reason why a safety feature is to get this exposure through a vaccine where you don't have a replicating virus, you just have exposure to this protein subunit. Gets your immune system sort of oriented in the right way so you don't have one of those catastrophic mistakes.
And the reason I was saying that is because in our department, I know of a lot of people that caught the virus, both last year and this year. And without going anywhere to naming names, one of them almost died. So you mean to tell me that I've been around 30, 40, 50 people, however many people it was, and somehow magically Barry came along and said, "Accurate, you're not going to get it." No, I find that hard to believe.
Well, it wasn't magic.
Well, no, but that's what I was saying. There has to be, so you're willing to fire people who are vaxxed because they're not taking the vax, but they've got built-in immunity to it, that every time they get it, they're going to build immunity, and you're doing the exact same thing with people over here. So, again, it goes back to the equal field. Either we're all on the equal field, or somebody's lying. The CDC has been changing their numbers left and right from last year. They've been all over the place. California, if you trust those guys' numbers, they're all over the place. So the casinos there, they're working under different governmental entities than Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and even Oregon. Oregon's kind of like, Oregon doesn't know what to think. And that's not just me saying, hey, I consulted with my doctor. You have to understand that, right? I'm not just blowing smoke into people's air. I actually talked about it with him. I said, okay, when it comes to vaping and cigarette smoke, if you and I go outside in frosty 32-degree weather and we're standing across from each other, we're breathing each other's moisture. Common sense, right? We could go do that right now at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you guys play with the idea of smoking, no smoking. Just here recently, supposedly, everybody's like, this is the worst virus ever. And yet we were open for like about a month. Who in his right mind, because I think he said it or somebody else did, thought that was a good idea. But where's the research for that? If the virus is that bad, because it's obviously coming out of your lungs, and you're standing around 30, 40 people blowing smoke with a vape or even a cigarette, reason has it that all those people are not contaminated. So from that perspective, I'm trying to understand. Trust me, my doctor is also into biology. He went to New York to say all the people that died in the, well, you know the whole thing. They just added like 12,000 people to the list that Como underrepresented. He was part of those people that went to that. He was part of the ship that went there that they didn't use. So when I'm talking, I'm just not just saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing. I'm trying to understand what you're telling me that I've done my own research on, not only from my doctor, but from the World Health Organization and CDC. And you look at all these facts and how they change over the course of time, and if you haven't been keeping up with them, they're changing all the time. Let alone, like what was it, last month? They came out with this thing that says that they were using the common flu test to test for COVID. And if you haven't seen that, you should probably check it out. That's what they were doing. And without going too much into it, certain people bought the right to produce new tests for COVID tests. That's all problem. So that's why I'm saying, when you guys are basing this whole thing, I understand the tribe. I love the tribe. They've given me an opportunity to make my life here, but I don't understand why, if you're going to vaccinate the tribe and protect them, but I also, my body's protecting me and building me up at the same time that you're taking booster shots, and if I'm not getting what you're getting and you're getting it, then who's the one with the real problem? If you got vaccinated and you got the flu, and I'm standing right next to you and I don't get it, how does that work?
Well, again, I'm not entirely sure of your question. Is there, I guess, are you asking a question or is this just rhetorical? Yeah, okay. I can't speak to the end of, I mean, one of my hobbies is tracking down and sort of finding origins to medical legends and myths. There's a lot of good ones coming out of COVID right now. The one about the people using the flu test to test for COVID, that may have happened. That's a mistake because it doesn't work. You know, but the thing is, the same machine that you use to do rapid strep test, influenza test, also has a cassette for COVID. So it could also be people simply mistook the fact that they're using the same machine that they use to do flu tests and doing COVID tests on, because it's just another cartridge that goes in there. So that could be confusing for folks. And it's also quite possible, and the weakest link in a lot of these systems is the human being operating it. Somebody could put the wrong cartridge in. You won't get a good result. Again, the question is down to both. You know, studies have actually done look that even something as bad as the COVID-19, who gets vaccinated, it broadens their immune response and makes them more resistant to subsequent variations. As far as, you know, why do you have to get vaccinated if you've had COVID, 3, 6, 10 times? That's a policy decision largely because it's so hard to prove it, so hard to show that you've had it. And also, it's so hard to know, even if someone's had a positive test, the resulting immunity is very variable because you have a positive test that have not. There's lots of people with positive tests that have no symptoms at all. Gosh, we tested, when we were testing people a bunch, we get a lot of folks that come in, they're just getting, a random test, and they say, I'm positive, I have no symptoms, I had no idea I had it. Those people are probably not developing a very long-lasting immunity either. Because again, the symptoms of every viral infection, the fever, the chills, the malaise, the muscle aches, everything, all that, those aren't from the virus, those are from your immune system. Those are from cytokines and lymphokines circulating as a result of your response to the virus. So if you're not feeling that, you're probably not getting a big immune response to it.
I've got next comment back here. Guys, can you raise your hand, please? Because we're getting a lot of people raising their hand back here. They're getting jumped in front of and we're waiting.
I told my staff I would ask that, this is for you, Bruce, was there any other options discussed other than make your employees get a vaccine or not get the vaccine, such as, employees that choose not to get vaccinated, maybe they'll wear a mask for the rest of their employment, or maybe they will have to take a test to their own dime, as you stated earlier, for the rest of their employment. Unless they choose, okay, this is really dumb after a year that I don't want to do this anymore, then that's still an option for them. Were any type of those options discussed?
I'm not the medical guy. I read the internet like everybody else, but we do have medical people at the tribe. And what they said about the testing, because we did discuss that, was that they are doing testing at the clinic, for example. They're going to be requiring vaccines. The alternative is daily testing. That's not a viable option for us. If we have, 200 people, 400 people, whatever, to do daily testing is not, and even with daily testing, you can you can still have the virus and it will miss a certain number of cases. So we did discuss it, but it wasn't something that was viable for us, and that's not the route that Tribal Council chose. As far as other options, I mean, we're doing the masking. You know, the comments we made that we've been all over the place. Well, what we do here is we follow my authority is to follow the state laws on COVID. So most of the changes that we've seen here are because the state has changed what they require of all businesses. So when there was a couple of exceptions. At one time, we were going to require masks of unvaccinated people versus vaccinated. That same day, the CDC came out and said they're finding new evidence that unvaccinated people with heavy loads of the virus can transmit it the same way. So we, that day, said, well, then everybody needs to wear a mask. And then it quickly became mandated by the state that everybody wear a mask. So a lot of the changes have been changes that the state has made. Before I was here, I can't talk, I don't know what happened before I was here. All I know is that every day we look to see what, if any, changes have been made by the government. We also look to see what are other businesses doing. We went to the mask mandate, I believe. I guess we waited for the state, or we waited for the state, but before that we were contacting not just other casinos, but Lowe's and Safeway and Fred Meyer, because once we saw that was clearly the trend, we were going to go to masks. But the state issued the mask mandate about 12, and then everybody did it. So it makes it easier for us when the state does it. But we also do independently look at what our policies should be for our unique circumstances out here and for our different interests and the different risks to us and the consequences of things to us.
Going back to the tests, whether or not you have COVID or whether or not you have the vaccine, has there been studies comparing those two numbers against each other as far as how many antibodies are contained within the body, whether you've had the virus or the vaccine? Not saying the virus and the vaccine, just vaccine on one side, virus on the other. Have they compared those numbers?
Yes, there have been studies looking at the number of different, what they call viral epitopes that our antibodies are generated to, natural infection, and also after vaccination. There are, as you might expect, there's a lot more different types of antibodies that are created during a natural infection. That said, that's not always a good thing, because one of the problems that was seen early on with the COVID pandemic was people having blood clots, having catastrophic blood clots. And they found that was due to antibodies, it turns out, to the nucleocapsid protein of the virus that cross-reacted with phospholipoproteins in the red blood cells, causing clotting. Didn't happen in many people, but it happened in some people. Again, that's going to be, a lot of that's just the genetic variation between people. So there's an advantage and a disadvantage to a broader immune response.
Well, in one of the vaccines, they also have blood clots as well, so that's provided on both sides is a blood clot history, correct?
Yeah, there were fewer actually with the vaccine than there were with the actual natural
But
infection.
the percentage of that happening was extremely low, say less than 1%.
Yeah, the percentage is very, very low in both ends. But the point being is that one of the reasons they honed in on the spike protein for the vaccine was that there was indications that the nucleocapsid protein could trigger antibody production in people who would be very bad. It would cause clotting or possibly other complications.
So in your medical profession, opinion, would you say that someone who has had the virus and someone who has had the vaccine are on equal footing as far as their immune response to future viruses?
Okay. I want to make sure everyone heard the question, which is, do people who have the virus and had the vaccine have equal footing? Not necessarily. Depends
It's
on,
obviously human variation. We can't account for human variation. Everybody reacts differently, but for the most part.
actually, for the most part, no, because you have to figure that most of the infections in this country anyway have been inapparent infections. We don't have a lot of data on those folks, but the little data we do have indicates that they have lower and less broad antibody production. So you can't say blanket that having natural infection gives you better immunity. Now, generally speaking, when you talk about viruses, yes, the natural infections tend to give longer and broader immunity. However, coronaviruses are particularly unique in that they don't trigger a tremendous amount of antibody production as it is. That's one of their evolutionary adaptations, to be able to keep coming back over and over again. They don't give as much of an antibody response, so they can come back again later. So that's one part. The vaccine is enhanced to give more antibody production, but it is, again, a limited target, which also gives you fewer antibodies, again, a lower breadth of antibody production, but that also reduces your risk of having what the immunologists call off-target attacks, where the antibody attacks things that it's not supposed to. A lot of autoimmune disorders are like that. You can see that in a lot of other infections like strep, where you can have post-strep kidney problems that are due to the antibodies to the strep attacking the kidneys. So generally speaking, is the sort of the general statement that a natural infection gives you better immune response than a vaccine is not entirely true in this case.
But it's also not untrue, right? You can't definitively say it's untrue as well. If you can't say it's not true, then you can't say it's untrue. Correct?
I think I said that if you say something's not true, then it's not true.
Well, what you're saying is that sometimes with body's virus, the body's response produces better, and sometimes it doesn't. So one person's body could, while another person's body doesn't, compared to the vaccine. Are there antibody tests that where you can test to see if you're actually?
There are antibody tests. Again, the problem has been, you can go to the CDC website. They actually have a number of studies for the track antibody positivity in the population. If you look at the numbers, it's actually pretty low, which, you look at it, so that seems odd. We've got all these people who've had it, yet the antibody prevalence is low, and that's because antibodies fade rapidly.
I've seen other studies where the antibodies continue to stay at the same rate as, say, someone who got the vaccine. So, I mean, there's tons of studies out there, and I would say that somebody can find a study to back up what they're saying everywhere out there. That's the problem with statistics and studies, is that sometimes the data can read both ways.
Well, you see the same thing with the antibody response to the vaccine, which is it fades over time, but the real issue that they're dealing with is that it's not the antibodies that provide you the long-lasting protection from either the vaccine or a viral infection. It happens to be CD4, CD8 T cells, or memory T cells that are left behind after the infection. They don't measure those for the simple reason it's really hard to measure them. And this is sort of what science used to call the drunk in the lamppost phenomenon. Whereas, basically they're looking at something that they can easily measure in the hopes that it can shed some light on the part that it's doing the real work that they can't measure easily. But when they do look at T cell, memory T cells, memory B cells, they're seeing that those persist for years after either an infection or the vaccination. And that's what gives you the long-lasting protection.
So if someone, say, had a mild reaction to the virus, and got the antibodies, got the memory T cells, and then was exposed to the virus later and had absolutely was completely asymptomatic, that would still re-engage the T cell memories and produce more antibodies, correct?
Correct. That's called natural boosting, and it happens with a lot of infections. In fact, that's eventually what happens to everyone with human circulating coronavirus.
Which would be the same idea as getting a booster shot with the vaccine, correct? So in reality, someone who has been exposed to the virus, for sure, has documentation to say that they've got it, could have the exact same amount of antibodies and T-cell responses as someone who's gotten the vaccine. Why would you not take that into account? If someone is exactly the same level as someone who's gotten the vaccine, with that, why would the tribe not be willing to accept that?
Well, for the simple reason you can't measure it. You can do antibody testing that still gives you no idea what the T-cell response is going to be.
There's a correlation there. That's what you.
Not a very good correlation.
That's the best correlation we have, though, is that correct?
No, we could do T-cell testing, but when they do the T-cell testing, they show that there's not very good correlation between antibody levels and protection. So there's a number of reasons why the antibody testing is done, and you'll notice they haven't really come out with antibody testing commercially yet either, and that's because it just simply doesn't last long enough to give people a good handle on who's had the infection, and there's really no correlation between antibody levels and their ability to protect you. Because again, if you want to go really deep, we also can't show which variant you got exposed to caused it. So it's
have a hard time because the vaccine and the booster shot work just like natural immunity. And at that point, they're on equal footing. So I think that there needs to be a realization that somebody who has gotten it and continues to get it before without having being asymptomatic is just as safe as everybody else. And that seems like the tribe didn't really want to even take that to the effect.
So I have a question about the adverse reactions of the vaccine. Now, we know that some people have them and some people don't. So if I were to get the vaccine, what is the policy for the casino for that? As far as time off and stuff like that to cooperate or, to heal from all of that? Because I've had some pretty adverse, adverse reactions to flu vaccine and stuff.
I appreciate that question because it is a valid question. And I'll let you know that I'm vaccinated and I had a horrible, horrible response for about a day and a half. And then it was like a light switch went on and I felt fine. So it happens differently with other people. My son, very mild reaction, other people, no reaction. That said, we want to make sure that those who do get vaccination, if you have a reaction, there's no absences, and they'll be administratively granted. So we don't want anybody taking advantage of that, obviously, but we want to make sure that individuals are taken care of. And I understand completely that some people are going to have reactions and some people aren't. Great question.
I'm definitely scared of having a reaction to vaccine. So if I was looking at, do I get COVID or do I get the vaccine and have either bad symptoms on either side and complications on either side? So I've been trying to weigh that out and figure out which would be best. And it's really frustrating. So I've been watching and, trying to weigh all the pros and cons and get all the information. And there's not a lot of information. It's constantly changing on what we do know and don't know through this time. So we've only had this vaccine out for a couple of years, and I've just been wanting to get more information on that. And now I feel like I don't really have much of a choice because I have to either just do it or lose my job. And it's really hard to face that right now.
I understand the frustration, especially the frustration with the state of the science, and that what you're seeing is science in the raw. You're seeing how messy science really is, because it does tend to zigzag. It's all over like a bunny running through a meadow. It's zigzag. Things can change on a dime when a new piece of information shows up. One thing I want to address though is, you know, and I have a bad reaction to that vaccine myself, but the question you need to ask yourself really is, if you're likely to have a bad reaction to the vaccine, you're also very likely to have a bad reaction to the virus. Because the vaccine is just presenting the surface proteins of the virus. That's going to be present in a lot higher count if you get an actual infection. So, plus you're going to have exposure to nuclear capsid proteins, plus whatever damage the virus does, all virus influenza. So, you know, this is one of those things we can't test, because you can't take the same person and give them the vaccine and then erase that immune system and give them the virus. But if you look statistically, it looks like we see the bad reaction to the virus and bad reaction to the vaccine track together.
I'm not a medical professional, but I just want to speak to your concern. I run a clinic, and we have very vulnerable people in the clinic, and I was really scared of the vaccine, and I've been vaccinated since January. I've had both vaccines, but I thought a lot about it, and what kind of helped me think through it, because I understand everything you guys are saying, is just I know that I'm going to be, if I could be exposing a lot of other people without realizing it, and it was for the greater good, and that's kind of how I came to the conclusion. I also knew that I was in a doctor's office, and they would sit with me for 20 minutes before I left, and I talked to everybody before I got it and said, I'm scared, I have a lot of anxiety, I can sit here, have someone watch me. So that's just to address your concern. They're really good about how they do that.
Is there a time period that a COVID positive person has to wait until they can get a vaccine? Is it true that they have to wait 90 days post-COVID to get the vaccine?
Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that once you're asymptomatic, once you're better, then you can get the vaccine. If you have a particularly serious COVID infection, I would check with whoever's treating you and see what they think at the time. And you definitely want to be all the way through the symptoms for a couple of reasons. One is, again, you're going to be stirring up the cytokines again. But the other one is that otherwise we don't know, is this the vaccine or is this just a worsening of your COVID infection? Now that's the basic reason we tell people not to get flu vaccines if they're sick, is because then we can't tell if the reaction is a reaction to the vaccine, or is something happening with your illness that you're now getting sick. So it's more of a practical matter.
Okay. Yeah, we do have quite a few employees that are currently out with COVID pneumonia. So I just wonder, are they going to be getting an extension on this 40 days if they're unable to be vaccinated due to having COVID?
I think we'll probably treat that as a medical exception, and so we'll have them contact HR and find their situation each person.
I was just wanting to find out from you guys if the casino and the travel crowds and government buildings and such out there are completely separate entities.
I think the way to look at it is we are a wholly owned tribal corporation, and our only shareholder is the tribe. But we have a separate board of directors, but our one shareholder is the tribe. So unlike IBM that has 1 million shareholders, our shareholder weighs in, and let me say that on this it's a little bit unique because this is more of a governmental issue than it is a business issue. That's why the state says when that their workers must be vaccinated. We're not the first people to do this. I mean, all of the military, all of the state, all of the federal government. But we are a separate corporation, but we have one shareholder. So the tribe has a lot more influence than a typical corporate shareholder.
So why are you treating us differently than the employees over there?
My responsibilities for the casino, I don't have responsibility for the employees over there. They do have an 86% vaccination rate, and they're also able to most of them, many of them, are able to perform their functions remotely. So they made their policy decisions about the tribe. I wasn't involved in that, but I can see the difference.
So why do we have the option to take daily testing, but we don't, and we're treated like robots?
Because they have 30 people to deal with. They're in a medical center, so they can do it. We just can't do that. And we're told it wasn't all that effective. I mean, there's all kinds of holes in testing. We're doing it as a temporary measure to give people time to come to grips with their decisions, but that's not a decision that we could make.
So what about the pregnant women who work currently don't have that choice not to take the COVID vaccine?
Right. I really can't, I'm not a medical person, but those people should contact HR and discuss that with HR. We'll figure it out on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I'm gonna just bring this up time, if it's all right. I know everybody that doesn't want to have the vaccination has their own reasons, whether it's I'm American, taking my rights, whether it's medical or the religious issue again. And every person that would love to file for a religious exemption, probably every one of those are going to be slightly different. And I know that you have the power to put that back on the board. And I would meet with you. And I would explain my point of view privately or with whatever board. And I would take the penalty of having to pay more for my insurance. I would do that. And I just pretty much beg you to put that back as an option. Doesn't mean I'll get it. It's hard to prove. And that's all I want to say. Please let people have the possibility of keeping their job.
Hi, my name's Alicia, I'm the admin for the Environmental Services Department. I have 3 things I'm wondering about. One, we haven't got any policy like in writing yet, but we've heard about the 10-day and the 40-day, and we're having to provide, proof of our vaccination. I've already had employees coming to me, giving me that, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with that yet. So it would be very helpful soon to get some guidance on what that looks like, what the employee is supposed to do with their vaccination card.
We'll provide everybody with access to this, and then there's probably this going through pages, so obviously it doesn't have every single scenario in it, but we're going to be trying to figure out how to best communicate the details as quickly as we can, immediately.
Okay, thank you. Something I'm wondering is, now that we're all, those of us that choose to get vaccinated and stay, is there a hope of getting rid of these, the masks?
We'll probably continue to follow the state laws on that.
Okay.
I'm curious. I have a question about the medical thing. And that is, my understanding is, originally I understood that if you were vaccinated that you were no longer at risk of passing it. There's not anything you need to worry about. And then a report came out saying it's just as much. But then I read the CDC thing as closely as I could. And it seemed to say that vaccinated people that don't have serious symptoms are not as at risk of passing a serious illness to other people, or of getting seriously ill themselves. But there still is some risk. You remember the thing's only 95% effective, so 5% could have a serious reaction. So there is that 5%. Of the vaccinated people who get sick, there's a very small percentage who get seriously ill and pass it as much as the other people, but it's very small. So when you're making policy decisions, you do have to look at risk. And risk means percentages and odds, which we all understand, right? Am I right about that? Is that, I guess I would just ask.
Yeah, a lot of this is what you're seeing is science in flux, and also the virus in flux. When the vaccine was developed, it was targeted for what was then the current circulating strain. Strain would be wrong. The virus doesn't care that it takes us time to get a vaccine through production. It's continued, and what happened is that initially it didn't mutate that fast because it didn't need to. because there wasn't a lot of immunity in the population. I don't want to make a rhyme, but as more and more people became immune, either because they had the infection, because they got vaccinated, the pressure on the virus to mutate and evade that immune response got bigger and bigger. And now, and this is exactly what we see in influenza at the end of every influenza season, is that initially the virus doesn't seem to change much. And then as more and more people either have it, get exposed to it, get vaccinated against it, you see variants popping up faster, 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 faster. And that's, I expect, what we're going to see with the coronavirus. Delta is just the flavor of the month. There's going to be another variant that's going to take over pretty soon. And then another one. And these are going to come faster and faster and faster. What's going to happen is this will eventually evade the vaccine completely. My guess. And again, I am speaking for myself, not Grand Ron, not CDC, not FDA, not Oregon Health Authority. Just myself, as my experience in looking at what's going to happen. This will eventually evade the vaccine. So we have this window of time where people can get some protection that will be relevant. And eventually, everybody is going to be exposed. If you look at the other human coronaviruses and look for antibodies or exposure titers to this, 99.9% of the population has antibodies to at least 2 of the 4 circulating human coronaviruses. We're all going to get it eventually. There's no getting out of this one. But the thing is to get as many people through the initial hit as possible without dying. And that's, the vaccine gives you some protection, even now, some protection against the Delta variant. The problem again is that people's response to the vaccine is variable too. Less variable than, because you don't have the dose issue that you do with the virus, where if you get the virus, you don't know whether you got just a waft of it as somebody walked by, or if you got the full spray, or if you're living with a family member where you're in constant contact. Those dosage things are really critical in these new novel viruses. But then with the vaccine, we know what the dose is, we know specifically what you're getting. It's a very controlled exposure. But the window of time when this is going to work is closing. And I think that's some of the things pushing to get this done, because in the time it would take for us to develop another, let's say we today went out and said we're going to come up with a vaccine for the Delta variant. At the rate things are changing, by the time that was ready, even pushing it through at warp speed, we're going to be into another variant. And these things are going to come hot and heavy. It's not happy news, it's not upbeat news, but it's kind of what I expect is going to happen. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Camille, this is probably more your area. Our job postings, currently it's for current employees have to be vaccinated. I'm making a logical deduction that people we hire are going to be required to have the vaccination. From a interview standpoint, you're not allowed to ask certain medical questions, but are we going to be adjusting all our job postings to say that that's a job requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So everybody who's had a job offer up until today will fall under the September 13th testing forward until October 15th. Everybody hired that goes on the job posting today, after today, will be subject to have a vaccination card. We'll help them facilitate getting into the clinic to get their vaccination if they need to. We'll help facilitate that process as best we can for them. Great question, thank you.
I just have 2 things. One thing for Camille is that you've heard a lot of people saying it's going to be bad, spreading the news bad, that it's going to be vaccinated. I feel the opposite of what you out there, that I think it's a positive thing. They might want to be here to work, come and work, they have new employees, so maybe put down our price, so requiring employees be vaccinated. So my other question for the doctor is that the vaccine wasn't just developed overnight. It's been a process for over years that they've been working on this with Alzheimer's and stuff, so people are afraid because it was developed so quickly. It really isn't that quickly, is that true or not?
well, that's an interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up. The 3 major vaccines, the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the Janssen, actually also the AstraZeneca, and even the Sputnik Russian one, they're all actually using what I would call off-the-shelf techniques. These are techniques of virus manufacture, virus production, that have been in use in research for about a decade for the one for the Moderna and the Pfizer. I can remember back over 10 years now when they were doing an HIV vaccine trial, and what they were using was almost exactly what the Moderna vaccine has, the same mRNA technique, wrapping in a lipid envelope. The vaccine, the HIV vaccine didn't work, but that had nothing to do with the delivery. The immunity that they developed was great, it just didn't help prevent HIV. So in the same thing, even with, although it's not my favorite, the Johnson or Janssen vaccine, that's adenovirus 26 technology that Johnson & Johnson has been selling to the research community for 10 years. So the thing is that what's changing is what's inside the capsule, not the wrapping, not the delivery program. Those have been tested for decades.
Okay, guys, so we are after 10 o'clock. We do want to still keep taking questions, but I'm going to ask you that it's a question and not necessarily a commentary, please.
Wait, we got people waiting, please.
Are we going to be adjusting the policy on Alabama vaccinations last week for requiring shots, where right now we're not following what the CDC says, since we're overshooting that? If everybody's vaccinated, are we going to adjust that as well? So if somebody does get it, is that going to be changed?
That's a great question. And so, as many of you have stated earlier today, it seems like we change from here to there. It's been a moving target, it really has, and we're doing the best that we can to move in the direction of what the CDC states. Our tribal medical officials have recommended to the tribe and through the Emergency Operations Committee their protocols, and we've been following strictly with those protocols. We do anticipate those may change and be reduced a little bit, especially if we have vaccinated individuals who may not have direct contact. So it's not the same quarantine or isolation period for everybody. The contact tracers, and I'm going to try to simplify this, I apologize if not. The contact tracers ask quite a bit more information than what we would at HR. And then based on that information, whether it's direct contact, secondary contact, whatever that looks like, then there's a protocol saying what that isolation is. Some people have symptoms and don't have any direct contact with a positive case. It's a different isolation period. So I empathize because it's been very, very hard to track and very hard to advise people, especially when it changes. I anticipate it will change. I just don't know what those changes will be. Thank you for the question.
I just wanted to know from your standpoint why the COVID vaccine is being forced down our throat, but the influenza vaccine is an option. And two, what validity does this COVID vaccine have over, say, smallpox and measles we've been developed and tried to lower any risk on it over the 20-year average, where this COVID vaccine is supposedly 12 months old?
Well, I can't really speak to your first question about why vaccines being forced down your throat. It's, a lot of that's just policy driven. And not entirely sure. Your question about the vaccines, why is this one's been developed so rapidly, whereas we've got other vaccines that have been around for decades? Well, actually, the smallpox vaccine, I worked with the virus quite a bit. Actually, one of the more dangerous vaccines we've got. That's why it's not being given anymore. It hasn't been given in this country, I think, since about 1975, maybe earlier. Because smallpox was eradicated in 1978, fortunately. But since I was working with, I'm old enough to have been vaccinated pre-eradication of smallpox, but everyone in that lab had to vaccinate against it because the virus itself kills, the vaccine, smallpox vaccine kills 1 in a million people that get it. And that was considered acceptable because, of course, smallpox variole major kills 30% of people who get it. Variole minor, which is a slight variant of it, kills only 10% of people who get it. Measles, the history of the measles vaccine production is amazing. The initial measles vaccine was actually an inactivated vaccine that turns out it actually caused more severe reaction when people were exposed to the measles virus, because of things they didn't understand at the time, which is called antibody-dependent enhancement. That's why the current one is a live virus. There's, again, these are all old vaccines. There are lots of newer vaccines that have been out. And what we're seeing now is almost like next-gen technology for vaccines. And we now have, instead of having to isolate the virus and find ways to inactivate it or mutate it to where it becomes less virulent, which then probably leads to potential revertant things like the saw with the polio vaccine. This one is, you can literally put whatever you want inside that capsule. It gives us a chance, an opportunity to develop vaccines very quickly. But the other really beautiful thing about this, especially the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, is they don't require that the virus ever be present in the manufacturing process. There's no possibility, I won't say no possibility because somebody can make a stupid mistake, but there is no point in the process of developing this virus, or this vaccine, where the virus is necessary. It's basically a lipid or fat bubble where there are pieces of mRNA that are actually manufactured in the lab without the use of any, not even without the use of viruses or yeast. It's just chemically manufactured mRNA piece that's stuck in there, and then that is injected into. So there's no place on the whole production line where the virus is ever present. So the chances of somebody, like the Cutter disaster they had with polio virus, or the revertant polio vaccine virus, or other things like that, there's no chance of that happening.
So what's when it comes to the test, the rapid tests especially, what's the percentage-wise of catching that? Because studies show that it's anywhere from 35 to 40% of actually catching COVID, like catching it. So it could provide a false negative or even a false positive. And if that's something that we're taking precaution doing, it seems very less than 50% that it's even going to catch anything or even show a false positive. And not only that, when it comes to just survivability rate with getting COVID-19, before the vaccines were put out, studies show that it was anywhere from 98 to 99%, even a little higher than 99% of surviving. That some people would have small reactions, some people would have great ones before the hospitals were even swamped. That anywhere from 98 to 99% was surviving. And that's a very small percentage of death. But granted, with how many people we have, I understand the big picture and certain stuff. But that's a high probability. And I said, with anything, someone told you you're going to go get a Powerball ticket, 99% chance you're going to win, you're going to take it. Also, besides medical reasons, or like how you were saying too with science in itself, we're told to trust the science, of course. But you're saying, picture a bunny in a field jumping back and forth, things change constantly. So how can we trust that? How can I trust that when it's constantly changing? But also for the fact of the tribe, does the tribe have to follow state law? Do they have to follow it? I know that answer, of course, they don't. They don't have to. So the mask mandates, all of this stuff, they don't actually have to follow. And my main concern is that if the tribe does care about tribal members and the employees that serve them, because we do serve them, and they're actually a tribe, especially when this thing happened in the first place. When we were closed down for 2.5 months, I'm very thankful for that. I think everybody is. We got paid and we were taken care of. But the thing that was touted more than anything was family. And how much they care about their employees and their tribal members and how they care about the community in general. And once we reopened and things got worse, we never shut down. We never cared. We in fact brought back smoking. So
she's gone now though, because I think there was more that's left. But would you at least give us an answer, would you consider a religious exemption, or at least have a talk about, I'm sure you guys have had a talk about it before, but what concerns people right now, I would love to keep my job. This whole place is my life. In fact, I thought I'm gonna work here for the rest of my life, I'll live in housing, work my way up and get a home one day. They even passed that on to my kids. But now that's gone. Because there's no consideration for the people that are literally crying, asking to keep their jobs. And that they're willing to do whatever it may take instead of putting something that has a 99% chance of surviving anyway. And the tests themselves are only 35%. So can we get an answer at least? Would it be on the table in the future, or is it just out of the question?
Well, first of all, this decision was made by the tribes. It's a government policy. I'm not going to say I don't have access to the tribal beach if I did. I need to ponder this. I came here with an open mind. It may not sound like it, but I did. So I just have to let you say, I'll let me ponder this. I'm not going to take it all on myself. I can't make the decision.
Thank you.
And I'll answer your questions in reverse order. The first one was, how can we trust the science? Well, I distinguish between trusting the scientists, who can be wrong, they're fallible, but trusting the process. And the process, if it doesn't look messy, you're probably not seeing what's really happening. Because the thing about science is somebody said, well, scientists don't know everything. That's true. If we knew everything, we'd stop. Because that's the point of science, is finding out new things. But the thing is, with science, if new information doesn't change the direction of the movement, so if something we discover, oh, this is very different than we thought it was, and that doesn't change the direction, we're thinking that something's broken. So expect things to jump around. And then the other thing, if you're going to look at governmental policy in response to science, if you're looking for logic and consistency in governmental policy, you are looking in the wrong place. This is the way it is. It's going to jump even more so than science. But the thing is, what people are seeing with this COVID-19 outbreak in the last couple of years is how messy science can be when you've got something new that just pops up and you've got to run around and try to find out what's going on. And every new study comes out with data, and you've got to say, okay, does this change what we know? Does this change how we understand this? And then the other thing, the subtext of that is, was this study done properly? Is this just a fluke? Is this a statistical crazy thing? So you're going to see a lot of messiness the first couple of years. There's a lot of things we're finding out. And this also speaks to why did we shut everything down back in the day and we didn't shut it down when it started to surge again? It's because we know more now. Okay. Your second question is, why should I worry about something that has a 99% survival rate? Well, you're right. If you have, if you're looking at 99 chances out of 100, that's not bad. Until you kind of look at, is it, we're going to put you up against the wall, and there's a 1 chance in 100 that there's a live round in the gun that we're going to shoot you. That might change the way you look at things. In reality, the survival rate is probably overall for the entire population probably better than 99%. But let's just say 99%. That still means 3 million deaths. That's a lot of people. That's more than we've lost so far. But still, it's a lot of people. Influenza doesn't kill it. I mean, when this thing first broke out, a lot of folks were saying, well, if this, people say, well, this is no worse than influenza. People say, well, yeah, influenza kills 50 to 100,000 Americans a year. So it has exceeded influenza. And your first question is actually about testing, and that's the thing. The testing itself, there's several different kinds. The ones we use, the rapid test, the ones we use isothermal PCR, actually RT-PCR, but the test itself is very sensitive and very specific. The problem is operator error, not necessarily running it, because those after machines are about as foolproof as you can get. It's getting the sample. And the problem is that people are a little squeamish, because to get a good sample, I mean, it's like cleaning a rifle. You gotta get that thing all the way in, all the way out. Most people don't have that kind of, it takes, somebody who's medically trained and preferably not a relative or friend to just go in and just go for it, to get a decent sample. On top of that, you got a situation of the period of time that people are positive. That was one thing we ran early on in the pandemic, was realizing that people who were actually sick, who had symptoms, were only shedding the virus for a relatively short period of time. Sometimes 2 to 3 days from the onset of symptoms. It was after 2 to 3 days before they finally got to the point, like, man, this is just not going away. And they come in, they get tested, and they're negative. They get tested, and they're still negative, even though they've shot every other sign of COVID. And then their COVID antibodies start rising, and you go, okay, this is clearly COVID. Why didn't the test show? And then they realize that, oddly enough, often the sicker you are, the shorter of time you actually are shedding the virus. And we had people who were asymptomatic who were still shedding the virus 60 to 90 days later. So that's all of that kind of shows why testing, although it's better than nothing, it's really not an adequate thing to do. Because for one thing, I don't think we want the entire casino staff to be walking around bloody noses all day. Because that's basically, we used to say, if you don't hear a gagging sound, if you don't see blood, you probably didn't get a decent sample.
I had two.
Yeah.
There was blood on both.
So you got good tests.
Well, the first one I had some symptoms. Thing is, when you shut down for 2.5 months, I can't guarantee that I had it today if I didn't do testing, but all I know is the exact same thing. Massive fever, massive headache that went away after a couple of days, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I felt like I was getting on a show. Like every part of my body was sore. My kids had way worse fevers. Took about a month for it to go away. Finally was gone. And I had a test. I had a couple things later on. The first one I had fever, and not to be too graphic, I had diarrhea, and I went and got tested, and they said there was nothing. I had that again, and it was covered. They gave me the vaccine. I had to go get tested. I told them, hey, it was pretty bad. I'm feeling a little better now. I have these symptoms. What should I do? I still have a little bit of diarrhea, but I have fever. They wanted me to test. Doctor recommended that it was 2 hours of stay work. I said I could go back. I can't go back. And they said, no, you need to stay. I got every single answer. Every single one. So the main thing I would say is please consider religious exemption. I know, of course, it has to be possible to try, but as a tribal member, and where my whole livelihood is, I live on the reservation, I work here. There are a lot of people that want to keep their jobs without having to invest in them. So that's really kind of I said, I'm not, and we're not talk about some things, it's definitely why I'm doing it. I believe my body to be a temple of the Lord's love. And that's it. I don't want to inject something I don't trust in. You can go look at my medical history if you want. I haven't had a vaccine since I was 7 because I never had the choice. And so there's evidence there to show that I refuse them. And I don't want to lose my daughter on some ground that I'll choose not to lose her. I hope you guys actually take the time and look more into it and at least consider the options with some of us that don't feel like we have a choice. And I do, of course, I think everybody appreciates that you're talking to us and quick for the last few hours. And have to make that decision not lightly, and know there's some consider things that people say here. I will. Thank you.
Any other questions or getting past time? I want to thank a good doctor, and I really appreciate it. I think without you here, let people know we'll be back again for. So you can come back for more questions, and let people know they can bring their medical questions, and worries, and stuff that we can address them. I appreciate you coming out.